The deeper we go, the stranger it gets. From stoneheads in Guatemala to the forgotten pyramids of Tucumán, from Japan's dolmens to cliffside forts in Ireland, each ruin holds a story, yet none speak it fully. We've only just begun to scratch the surface. If you're still with us, you're the kind of explorer this world needs. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. The next mystery is just as real and even more puzzling. Yangshan Quarry, the mega structure that was never finished. There is something strange about abandoned things. They sit in silence, frozen in time, while everything else continues to move. And deep in the hills near Nanjing, China, there is such a place largely forgotten, rarely spoken of, and barely understood. It's called the Yangshan Quarry. But it's not just any old quarry. It's the site of something far bigger than what anyone expected. A site where construction once began on a monument so massive, so absurdly heavy, it couldn't have been moved. Not with modern machines, and certainly not with ancient tools. Yet someone started and then they stopped. There's no written explanation, no official reason, just enormous stone blocks lying half-carved in the earth, quiet, heavy, and unmoved for centuries. Let's explore this mystery slowly, thoughtfully, as if you were there, walking through the quiet stone paths, feeling the enormity of the site pressing into the air around you. It begins in the year 1405. That's when the Yonglei Emperor, the third ruler of China's Ming dynasty, gave a grand order. He wanted to build a mausoleum, a resting place not only worthy of a great emperor, but one that would surpass anything built before. At the heart of this plan was a stele. Now a stela is a large stone monument. Usually it's carved with words, decrees, praises, sometimes even warnings from rulers long gone. In Chinese tradition, these were often placed outside important tombs or temples. But the stela the emperor wanted wasn't just decorative. It was ambitious, towering, monolithic. According to modern measurements, the full structure would have stood nearly 20 stories high, weighing an estimated 31,000 tons. That's over 60 million pounds of solid stone. And so they began. Stone cutters, engineers, and laborers arrived at the Yangshan Quarry about 15 miles east of Nanjing. There in the mountainside, they began carving three massive components: the stela base, the body, and the crown. They didn't cut the blocks and move them. No, they carved them directly out of the bedrock, still attached to the earth beneath. Like sculpting a statue that you plan to free later. Only these were never freed, because by the time all three parts were shaped, someone realized the truth. They were far too big to move. That wasn't just inconvenient, it was impossible. Even today, with the strongest cranes and transport trucks, it would take an incredible feat of engineering to lift even one of the pieces. Back then, it was like trying to move a mountain with ropes and carts. So the project was stopped, but the stone remained. And that's where the real mystery begins. Because some scholars today wonder, how could this have happened? How could engineers and workers not realize in advance that these stones were too large? These weren't small miscalculations. This was a 31,000-ton misstep. Could they really have gone that far only to find out too late? Or is there something else we're missing? You see, the Yangshan Quarry doesn't just raise questions about ancient construction. It challenges assumptions. The sheer scale of what was attempted doesn't make sense when you compare it to what we believe the technology of the time allowed. It suggests that either the Ming dynasty was attempting something far beyond their capability, or they knew something we don't. When you walk through the site today, if you ever visit, it feels silent. Not just because there are no machines or workers, but because of the weight of it all. You stand beside stone blocks larger than train cars cut with incredible precision, still lying where they were carved over 600 years ago. There are no carvings explaining the stoppage, no ceremonial markers, no signs of later use. The place simply froze and nature took over. Small plants grow along the cracks now. Rainwater collects in the carved trenches. Occasionally visitors wander through, cameras in hand, but few stay long. There's an eerie stillness to the place, and a question hangs in the air. Why start something no one could finish? Some have theorized that the emperor wanted the impossible to leave behind a structure that defied imagination, even if it couldn't be completed. Others think it may have been a symbolic gesture, or a mistake, or possibly a fragment of a larger, now lost plan. There's also the strange matter of how smooth the carving is. The surfaces of the steely parts are exceptionally flat. Even today, it would require industrial-grade tools to achieve such results. Some believe there may have been techniques used that we don't fully understand. Tools now lost to time. And then there's the geometry. Each piece, the base, the body, the crown, fits into the next with almost mechanical precision, as if they were designed to slot together. Not just stacked, but engineered. Like modular components of something far more advanced. Could it be that the builders had access to ancient engineering methods? Or were they following instructions, lost blueprints handed down from generations before? Or perhaps the project was never meant to be finished? That's a more haunting idea, isn't it? That the stela was carved not for movement but for permanence. That the emperor ordered its creation as a message not to the living but to the future. Silent monument to what humanity could attempt even if it failed. Because here it still stands, unfinished, immovable, but not forgotten. And the truth is, the Yangshan quarry might not be alone. Around the world, there are other megalithic sites, ancient stones shaped with incredible skill, often abandoned, their purpose unclear. From the Baalbek stones in Lebanon to the unfinished obelisk in Egypt, to the massive granite spheres found in Costa Rica, again and again, we find these hints of a time when someone tried to do something enormous. Did they fail, or did they succeed in a way we don't yet understand? Back in China, as the sun sets over the hills near Nanjing, the shadows grow long across the carved stone. The quarry grows cold, even in summer, and the wind moves through it softly, like breath through a forgotten hall. Some say you can feel the weight of history there. Others say it just feels like something was left behind. A project started with great intent, then abandoned, as if the purpose had been fulfilled the moment it was carved, not when it was moved. That's the enigma of Yangshan, a monument that was never raised, a structure that was never assembled, a message perhaps written in silence. And maybe that's why it still fascinates us, because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones that were finished. They're the ones that stopped just when they were getting started. Dolmens of Marier, the forgotten tombs of the Western Ghats. There's a quiet part of India most travelers skip. Tucked away on the edge of the Western Ghats, far from the noise of cities or tourist trails, lies a gentle rolling valley. The hills rise not with drama but with calm. Wind moves slow. Shadows stretch long, and hidden between the sandalwood trees and grassy slopes stand dozens of stone chambers. Ancient, silent, weathered by time. These are the dolmens of Marier, and no one knows who built them. They aren't massive pyramids or towering ziggurats. You won't find them on travel brochures or history textbooks. But once you see them, square blocks of rock, carefully balanced, perfectly aligned, you can't stop wondering, who were these people? Why? Did they come all the way here? And what did they bury beneath the slabs? Tonight, let's drift into this forgotten valley where stones speak slowly, and the past whispers just loud enough to keep you wondering. They call them munaras. It means the resting place of sages. For centuries, the locals believed these were places where ancient monks or mystics came to meditate. But archaeologists later realized they were more than that, much more. Most of them are burial chambers built thousands of years ago, possibly older than the pyramids of Giza, possibly dating back to 3000 BCE, or maybe 1500 BCE, depending on which site you examine. Either way, that makes them some of India's oldest megalithic relics. There's a rhythm to them, 4 upright slabs forming a rectangle topped with a flat stone roof. Some are simple, like stone boxes. Others are larger with entrances, multiple chambers, even circular holes carved on the slabs, possibly to let the soul pass through or perhaps to place offerings, but no one really knows. Walk through Maror and you don't feel like you're in a graveyard. You feel like you've stumbled into a lost memory. The hills roll quietly. The air is heavy with the scent of sandalwood. Birds chirp in the distance and then out of nowhere. 1 dolmen, then 5, then 20. Hidden among shrubs, some collapsed, others still standing as if time simply gave up trying to bury them. Most are found in 2 main spots, Kavilikadavu and Anakotapara. Both are slightly elevated, giving you a clear view of the valley below. That's something archaeologists find curious. These builders didn't just place tombs anywhere. They chose locations with a view, as if the dead still wanted to watch the world go by, as if being buried high above the river had a sacred meaning. And speaking of rivers, the Panar River snakes lazily through this valley. Its waters are shallow but always flowing. Locals say the river remembers that it's seen the rise and fall of forgotten tribes. Maybe even the people who built the dolmens. Some theories suggest nomadic tribes from the Iron Age created these tombs. Others believe these were permanent settlements, burial sites tied to ancestors and rituals long gone. Pottery shards, iron tools, and burial urns have been found in the area, often buried beneath the dolmens. One urn had tiny remains, ashes, and charred bone, confirming the site's purpose. But what's strange is no one's found the actual living quarters of these people. Where did they sleep? Where did they cook? Did they live nearby or only come here to bury the dead? There's another mystery. Some dolmens have tiny circular holes carved into the stones, no wider than a child's hand. Some are near the ground. Others face the east and no one knows why. Were they spiritual portals feeding holes for offerings? Could they have been used to speak to the dead? Archaeologists offer theories, but none of them satisfy. And the older the dolmen, the more refined the craftsmanship. That detail has led some researchers to believe these builders passed down knowledge for centuries. A generational tradition of building with stone, a language of slabs. The stones themselves are another question. These aren't loose rocks picked from nearby. Each slab weighs hundreds of kilos, some even a ton or more. But there's no evidence of quarrying nearby. So either they transported them from a distance or the quarries themselves are long gone. That tells us something important. This wasn't random. Someone or some group went to serious effort to bury their dead like this. The effort wasn't for show. It wasn't about status. There's no gold, no riches, just bones, ashes, urns, and rocks. So the value must have been spiritual. Today, there are about 70 dolmens still standing in the Mario region, but archaeologists believe there were hundreds more. Some have collapsed. Some were repurposed for building. Others were destroyed by ignorance or vandalism. It's heartbreaking, really, because these aren't just stone boxes. They're messages from a civilization with no voice. And each one we lose is a question we'll never get to ask. The Archaeological Survey of India has marked a few as protected, but preservation is slow. Tourists climb them, farmers clear them, and nature, unbothered, lets the vines grow over the stones year by year. But even with all that erosion, the atmosphere here hasn't changed. Mirror still feels like it knows something, like the wind has watched everything. The trees lean a little as if listening, and the dolmens, silent and stubborn, wait. Maybe that's the magic of this place. It doesn't demand your attention. It doesn't try to impress you. It just sits in quiet confidence, knowing it has secrets you'll never fully understand. Stand before one of these tombs and you feel it. That invisible thread stretching back thousands of years. A feeling that someone buried their loved ones here. Someone watched the sunset behind those hills and said goodbye. Someone carved a hole in a stone hoping their voice would carry into the next world. And you standing here have become part of that thread. Some locals say that on quiet nights, if you walk through the dolmens alone, you can hear a low hum like a song beneath the earth. Others say that if you sit long enough near a tombstone, you'll dream of fire, drums, and men in ash robes. It's probably just stories, probably just wind. But still you wonder, maybe the builders of Maror didn't want to be remembered with grand monuments. Maybe they just wanted to be remembered at all. And every time we tell their story, visit their tombs, or simply sit in silence and listen, we give them that gift. So tonight, while the world sleeps and the wind moves through the sandalwood trees, let your thoughts drift to Maror, to the dolmens that still stand, to the voices that may still whisper through stone, and to a people whose names are lost, but whose presence is still quietly felt, if you're willing to slow down and feel it. The Gia temples of Malta, older than the pyramids. It begins on a small island in the heart of the Mediterranean. You wouldn't expect something this ancient to rise from such quiet land, where olive trees sway in the wind, and stone houses sit peacefully on green hills. But in the countryside of Gul, Malta's sister island, there lies a mystery older than history itself. Older than the Great Pyramid of Giza, older than Stonehenge, a structure built with stone so massive, so strangely placed that, even now, no one really knows who built it or why. This is the story of the Gia temples, a name that literally means place of giants. And when you stand before these stones, you understand why. Some of them weigh more than 50 tons, and yet they were moved, carved, and stacked over 5,000 years ago at a time when there were no wheels, no pulleys, and supposedly no advanced civilizations capable of such construction. You look at them and something in your brain just doesn't compute. Who built this? Why does it exist? And how could something so incredibly ancient remain so quiet in the story of the world? The Gia complex consists of two massive temple structures built side by side from above. They almost resemble a figure eight, but it's not the shape that stuns you. It's the size. These aren't random rocks or loose rubble. These are megaliths, truly massive stones that had to be quarried, dragged, lifted, and perfectly set into place. And somehow they still stand even after millennia of storms, erosion, and time. The oldest parts of Gontia date back to around 3600 BCE. Just pause on that for a second. 600 BCE. That's before the pyramids of Egypt. Before the Inca, the Maya, or the Chinese dynasties. Before the Bronze Age. Whoever built this place did so with techniques and knowledge that were supposedly impossible at the time. And here's where it gets even stranger. There's no written record, no carvings of a culture that built it, no language, no known script, just the stones. Inside the temples have a distinctive cloverleaf shape with altars and fire pits and curious niches carved into the walls. Archaeologists found animal bones, fragments of pottery, and little figurines often interpreted as fertility goddesses. But even those interpretations are guesses because nothing definitive explains how this place was used. It's as if a civilization just rose up, built a temple complex with technologies we still don't fully understand, and then disappeared without a trace. Locals used to believe giants built the temples. That's actually where the name comes from. Genichia Giantissu, a mythical woman who carried the stones on her head and constructed the place overnight while nursing a baby. It sounds absurd, sure, but when you look at these stones up close, the myth doesn't feel all that far-fetched, because what else could explain them? And there's more. Each stone is fitted with surprising precision. No mortar holds them together, just pure placement. The sheer weight of the stones keeps them standing. That technique wouldn't be replicated again for thousands of years. Not until the Greeks and Romans. And the way the temple is oriented, it lines up with solstices and celestial patterns just like Stonehenge, which means the builders weren't just strong. They were astronomically aware. They had knowledge of the skies, of solar movements, of seasons and cycles. Again, long before such knowledge was supposed to exist. But here's the thing that gives people chills. There's no indication of who these builders were. No bones, no burial sites, no dwellings near the temple, nothing to say. This is who lived here. The people of Gantia left behind Nostri only the stones, as if the temple itself was never meant to be understood, just remembered. And now it's quiet again. Wind whispers between the walls. Tourists walk softly between the great chambers, their footsteps muted by the soil and grass. Even today, only a handful of people visit Gantia compared to other ancient sites. It's almost like it's hiding in plain sight, content to be overlooked. But if you ever stand there, if you run your hand along the roof surface of those colossal blocks, you feel it. The weight of time, the silence of forgotten knowledge, the gravity of a place built with purpose that outlived its creators. Some archaeologists argue that Gantia was part of a larger religious culture on Malta, that it wasn't alone. And indeed other megalithic sites dot the island Hajarim Managa Tarxian, but none are as old as Gantia, and none have quite the same presence. It's like this was the beginning, the root. Maybe it was a place of worship. Maybe a calendar, maybe a gateway between the living and the dead. Or maybe it was a message carved in stone for those who would come much, much later. People like us. But what does it say? What were they trying to preserve? And what happened to the builders? These questions stay with you long after you leave the site. Long after the images fade from your eyes, they echo quietly like wind through the temple halls. Because Gontia isn't just a ruin. It's a reminder that the past is much stranger than we think. That knowledge isn't linear. That greatness can rise and vanish, leaving behind only whispers in stone. And in the soft stillness of night, when the world falls quiet, you start to wonder how many other places like Gontia are waiting to be found. How many other stories have been lost? And how many giants once walked among us, not of size, but of understanding. So sleep now if you can. Let those thoughts drift. Let the stones of Gia hum softly in your mind, because some truths are older than time, and some mysteries were never meant to be solved. New Grange, Ireland's solstice-aligned tomb. Long before the pyramids of Egypt reached for the sky, before the first bricks of Stonehenge were raised, and even before writing became a habit carved in clay, there stood a tomb on a green hill, basking in the chill Irish air, waiting for a single moment every year when the light would return. This is New Grange. Imagine you're walking in the rolling countryside of Ireland, where the grass always seems just a little too green. It's early morning. There's a mist crawling over the landscape, and the horizon still holds onto a pale glow from the night. No crowds, no guides, just you and a strange silence. Not empty, just watching. You feel the weight of time pressing down from the clouds and then rising like a knuckle from the earth. You see it. A hill, not just a hill. A round, smooth mound nearly 300 ft across, its edge wrapped in ancient white quartz stones like some kind of ceremonial belt. In the middle, one single dark entryway, low and narrow, carved with spirals, warnings, invitations. You can't tell, but this is New Grange. It was built over 5,000 years ago. Older than the Great Pyramid of Giza, older than Stonehenge, older than writing itself. It's not just a tomb. It's a clock, a calendar, a lens for sunlight. Once a year on the winter solstice, the rising sun lines up perfectly with the narrow stone passage. Light travels 19 minutes across ancient rock, through a corridor that curves just enough to keep the outside world out, and then it hits the inner chamber for 17 minutes just once a year. The darkest place on Earth becomes the brightest, and then it's gone. Now imagine that you're one of the first people to ever walk through that passage. No flashlights, no torches, just your hands brushing along the cold stone walls, the weight of the hill pressing down above you. The air changes as you walk further in, less wind, more silence. And when you finally step into the main chamber, it's not just a room. It's a space designed by minds that understood the heavens better than we do. A corbelled dome rises above you, dry stone stacked like upside-down stairs, narrowing to a perfect cap, and it's held itself up without mortar for over 5 millennia. There are 3 aloves in the chamber, one to your left, one to your right, and one straight ahead. Each of them holds a basin stone, and each stone once held bones. But what kind of people were they? We still don't know who built New Grange. There are no written records. No names, no blueprints, only the stones and the carvings, spirals, concentric circles, zigzags, solar symbols perhaps. But they could just as easily be maps or dreams or something we'll never decode. Some believe it was built by a farming society. Others think it was the work of a lost, advanced culture long forgotten. But one thing is clear. They were not simple people. The stone for the outer wall, the white quartz, was brought from the Wicklow Mountains over 80 kilometers away, and the dark rounded stones from rivers far to the north. This wasn't just architecture. It was intention, ritual, a message to time itself. When archaeologists first entered the mound in the 1600s, it had already been buried by centuries of dirt and grass. A small hole in the mound gave way to a hidden passage, and at the back, a room that had been untouched by air or sunlight for thousands of years. Inside, they found bones, tools, beads, but also a mystery. Why did these ancient people go to such incredible lengths to ensure the sun would reach a hidden chamber just once a year to honor the dead? To welcome the return of the sun? Or maybe something even deeper? Here's the part that makes you pause. The precision required to build New Grange is astonishing. The alignment with the solstice sunrise isn't accidental. It required astronomical knowledge, surveying, planning, and above all, faith. Faith that the light would return. Faith that the darkness wouldn't last forever. That's why it still moves people to this day. Every year on December 21st, just a handful of visitors are chosen by lottery. They walk the same path through the narrow corridor and they wait. The sky grows brighter. The chamber remains dark. And then a thin shaft of sunlight slices through the opening above the doorway, crawling along the floor, illuminating stone that hasn't changed in 5,000 years. It's silent, it's sacred, and it lasts less than 20 minutes. Then it's over like nothing happened. In our world of electricity and instant light, it's easy to forget what darkness really means. But back then, when winter was long and brutal, this was hope. This was resurrection. This was proof that the world was still turning. So when people ask why New Grange was built, maybe the answer isn't found in stone. Maybe it's in the human need for light in the darkness, for meaning in the cold, for stories that last longer than our names. So the next time the sun rises on December 21st, close your eyes and picture it, a golden beam piercing the belly of the earth, touching the bones of ancestors, warming a stone basin in a room built with care and vision before history began. New Grange isn't just an ancient tomb. It's a whisper from a world that understood the sky better than we do. And somehow it still speaks. The whisper beneath the earth, the hypogam of Coulsaflé. It was never supposed to be found. Not in the middle of a crowded suburb, not beneath a house, and certainly not this well hidden. But in 1902, while construction workers were digging for a new water system in the town of Paola, Malta, their tools struck something strange, something hollow, something ancient. They had no idea that beneath their feet, carved into solid limestone, was one of the most mysterious underground temples in the world, the hypogam of Coulsaflé. And even now, more than a century after its accidental discovery, no one fully understands who built it, why it was made, or how its deepest chamber can make your voice echo in impossible ways. Let's descend slowly into the silence. Let's enter the place where sound doesn't behave like it should, where even a whisper can linger like a ghost. And let's do it gently, at a calm, drifting pace. Because tonight, we're just here to listen and wonder. The hypogee is unlike any other prehistoric site in Europe. It isn't just carved, it's sculpted, 3 levels deep, entirely underground, dug out of solid limestone with no metal tools, and somehow built over 5,000 years ago. That makes it older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, even older than the city of Rome. But unlike those towering monuments, this one hides itself. If you were standing right above it before its discovery, you wouldn't see a single sign it was there. No grand stones jutting out, no hills, no markers, just earth. That silence is part of its power. Even now, when you visit, you descend through a modern entrance and suddenly find yourself surrounded by carved passages, smooth chambers, and vaulted ceilings that shouldn't even exist at that time in history. But here's where it gets even stranger. In the second chamber, known now as the Oracle Room, your voice begins to behave differently. If you speak at certain pitches, especially between 95 and 120 hertz, your voice begins to bounce, to deepen, to ripple throughout the entire structure. Even a whisper in that chamber will vibrate and echo throughout the hypog like it's alive, like something is listening. Now that alone would be strange, but archaeological tests have confirmed that these sound patterns aren't random. They appear intentional. Whoever carved this room may have tuned it. They didn't just dig out a cave, they shaped an acoustic instrument. Think about that. 5,000 years ago, someone using only bone, stone, and antler tools was able to carve an underground structure that could manipulate human sound waves to create a full-body experience. Not in a surface temple, not in a monument for the gods, but in the dark underground with no written language, with no wheels, with no light. Why? Let's slow down here. Imagine walking down into the chamber now. The stone beneath your feet is cool. Your footsteps sound flat until you speak or breathe or even clear your throat. Suddenly, you feel the sound bounce back, not just in your ears, but in your bones. The Oracle Room doesn't just reflect sound. It amplifies it, enhances it, vibrates it through your chest. Some researchers think this would have induced a trance-like state in the person inside, a kind of sonic hallucination. Others believe it was used during rites when a priest or shaman would speak, and the sound would seem to come from everywhere at once, and then silence again. That leads to one of the most overlooked features of the hypogee. It's a burial site. Inside, archaeologists found the remains of more than 7,000 individuals tucked into chambers and nooks throughout the temple. Some were buried with red ochre on their bones, an ancientary pigment. Others were left in tightly packed groups as if waiting for something. And then there are the skulls. During the early studies of the hypogam, a set of elongated skulls was discovered in one of the chambers. Yes, elongated. Some of these skulls lacked the cranial sutures found in most human skulls, lines where the bones fused together during childhood. For a time, these skulls were displayed in Malta's National Museum, but now they're gone. missing, removed from public display. Some believe they were hidden intentionally. No official explanation was ever given, and so the hypogam keeps its secrets. Let's pause and just sit inside the oracle room for a while. Let the silence wrap around. You don't hear birds or wind or anything from the surface. You hear stone, you hear your heartbeat, and if you're quiet enough, maybe, just maybe, you hear the faintest hum from the wall itself. That low, steady tone. It isn't mechanical. It isn't electric. But some visitors say it feels like it's pulsing with life, like the very rock is holding its breath. It's easy to get lost in the idea that this was just a burial chamber, but the design is too intentional. The carvings follow symmetrical patterns. The rooms align with solar events, and the acoustics, well, nothing like them exists anywhere else in the prehistoric world. Some think this was an ancient temple for rebirth, a kind of womb of the earth. You descended into it during death, only to be reborn into another form. That might explain the darkness, the sound, the womb-like shapes of the chambers. The entire experience was probably meant to be overwhelming to connect the living and the dead in a space that felt you nearly. And when you stepped back out into the sun, you didn't feel the same anymore. We don't know who built it. We don't know how they engineered the acoustic resonance. And we don't know why it was buried and forgotten for thousands of years. But here it is, still here, still whispering, still waiting. So tonight, if you close your eyes and listen carefully, imagine the cool stone beneath your hands, the echo of a voice you didn't speak, and the faint humming breath of a structure that was never supposed to be found. Because under the streets of Malta, the earth still remembers what we've forgotten. La Ciudad Perdida, the city the jungle tried to keep. There's something ancient in the way mist moves over the Sierra Nevada mountains of Colombia. Something that doesn't rush. Something that seems to wait. As if the landscape itself remembers things far older than we do. And nestled deep within this misted terrain is a place that nearly slipped through the cracks of time, completely. A lost city hidden for over 1,000 years, held tightly by jungle roots and silence. This is La Ciudad Perdida, not just a name, not just a site, but a living riddle. A city reclaimed by nature and then quietly given back. And in this chapter, we're not rushing. We're not here to solve everything. We're simply going to walk slowly through its moss-covered terraces, over ancient stones, through the ghost of a city that still breathes if you listen carefully enough. You might want to relax a little deeper. Maybe close your eyes. Let your breath match the pace of the jungle. Because this isn't just a story of archaeology. It's a story of something older, something that waited. They call it Tiuna. At least that's what the descendants of the people who built it still whisper in the mountains. The Tirona people long before the name Colombia ever existed. La Ciudad Perdida isn't like the big tourist cities you've heard of. No flashy temples like in Egypt. No towering pyramids like in Mexico. Doesn't want to be loud. Doesn't need to be loud. To reach it, you don't just drive up to the gate. No, you walk. And not a little stroll either. We're talking a multi-day trek through deep rainforest. Hot, humid, quiet. The kind of quiet where your own footsteps feel like too much. The kind of quiet that makes your thoughts louder. By the time you get there, you're not the same. You've already begun to feel the weight of time. Then, out of nowhere, the stairs appear. Roughly 2,200 stone steps, hand-carved not to impress, just to exist. Climbing them is like rising out of a dream, each one pulling you higher into a city that shouldn't even be here anymore. And yet it is. La Ciudad Perdida was built around the year 800 AD. That's 600 years before Machu Picchu. And here's the strange part. Almost no one in the outside world knew it existed until the 1970s. You heard that right. For over 1,000 years, this massive network of stone platforms, circular plazas, tiled roads, and staircases sat hidden, untouched. Not buried under ash or sand, but wrapped in vines. Smothered by jungle, swallowed by time. Why? Because it was never really lost to everyone. The indigenous people of the region, the Kogi, the Arhuaco, the Wiwa, they always knew. Always. They'd pass the story down generation to generation. They called it Tiuna, the heart of their ancestors. But they didn't talk about it with outsiders. Not because they forgot it, but because they protected it. Think about that for a second. While the world rushed forward, these people held the memory quietly, carefully. When looters stumbled on the city in the 70s, they didn't know what they'd found. They called it the Green Hell. And as they pried gold figurines from the ground and sold them on black markets, they couldn't have known they were breaking open a sacred site. Archaeologists followed soon after, but the damage had begun. Still, La Ciudad Perdida remains mostly unexcavated, still half-buried, not because no one cares, but because the indigenous tribes have requested it stay that way. They believe the city is alive, that it has a spirit, and disturbing too much would break the balance. And honestly, when you stand there surrounded by green silence, you get it. The structures are simple. No massive statues, no glittering mosaics, but everything here feels deliberate. There are over 250 terraces, each one carved into the mountainside, flat, round, mossy. And on these terraces, homes, meeting places, ceremony circles. They had a water system built using gravity that still works today. Some of the stone paths run straight into the jungle and vanish. No one knows how far they go. The stairs spiral in odd ways with curves and loops that defy straight logic. It's as if they weren't built for speed, but for feeling. Many visitors describe the place as energetic, not in a New Age way, but in a quiet, electric way, as if the stone remembers being stepped on, as if the forest is still listening. Here's something even stranger. When researchers asked the local Kogi elders about the site's original purpose, they didn't talk about kings or battles or conquests. They talked about balance. They said the city was built as a place of cosmic alignment, a bridge between the physical and spiritual. The terraces, they claim, correspond to star patterns. That the city was laid out not just to live, but to connect. Think about that for a second. We build cities for economy, for military, for power. They built this one to listen to the world. That's a different kind of intelligence. The Kogi believe that every action in the modern world echoes in the spiritual realm. That cutting a tree or digging a mine sends ripples through a delicate web. That humans aren't above nature but inside it. And that places like Tuna La Ciudad Perdida are focal points in that web. It's not mythology to them. It's structure. It's science. Just a different kind. And so when people walk through the city today, they're not just tourists. They're guests stepping lightly through someone else's memory. The city has no written record, no scrolls, no stone tablets, but maybe it doesn't need them. Maybe the story is told in the way the stairs tilt, the way the terraces align, the way the water still flows even when no one's watching. There's something peaceful about a city that doesn't try to impress you, that doesn't shout its history at you. It simply exists, waiting, breathing, quietly, offering a glimpse into a time when architecture wasn't just survival, it was communion. La Ciudad Perdida isn't a mystery to solve. It's not a treasure to take. It's a feeling, a rhythm. It's the pulse of something older than any flag, any empire, any map. And maybe that's why the jungle took it back for so long, to keep that pulse from being forgotten. So next time you hear a story about a lost city, remember this one. It wasn't really lost. It was just waiting. Dolmen of Manga, the hidden well beneath the stones. Have you ever stood before something so old, so quiet, and so heavy with silence that it almost felt like time itself had paused just to make space for it? There's a place in the south of Spain that doesn't look like much at first glance. It's not built high into the mountains or covered in gold or carved with dramatic faces or creatures. It's just a mound, a very old one covered in grass blending into the land. You might walk right past it, but underneath that mound lies one of the most remarkable prehistoric structures ever built. It's called the Dolmen of Manga. This isn't some forgotten ruin off a trail somewhere. It's massive, and it was made thousands of years ago, long before the pyramids of Egypt were even imagined. What makes it special isn't just how old it is or even how large, but what it hides quietly beneath its heavy stones. A secret chamber and a well deep underground. Let's step inside together slowly, gently as if we're walking through time itself. The entrance is wide and low, carved in massive sandstone blocks, each one weighing tons. How did they move them? No one's sure. We don't even know what kind of people built this place. There's no written record, no carvings that tell us their names or their gods, just stone and silence. Inside, the ceiling is low and the air is thick. There's a stillness here you don't feel in most ancient places. It's quiet, deeper than silence. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring just from the absence of sound. Even your footsteps feel like intrusions. The walls aren't decorated. There are no fresco, no sculptures. But somehow that makes it more powerful. Every stone here feels intentional, like it's holding something in or keeping something out. There are 3 massive upright stones supporting a gigantic capstone, one of the largest ever placed in prehistoric Europe. It weighs around 180 tons. To put that in perspective, imagine 120 small cars stacked into one stone. And yet, it was moved and placed perfectly balanced by people who had no wheels, no cranes, and no written language. Just muscle, will, and knowledge passed down through time. The further in you walk, the darker it gets, but it doesn't feel cold. It feels heavy. The air seems to press in slightly, like the stone is aware of you. It's an odd feeling, but one that almost everyone reports when they visit the dolmen of Manga, as if the place is watching. At the end of the long passage, something strange, a circular opening carefully carved into the ground. It's a well, perfectly round, dropping 20 meters straight down into the rock. But here's the mystery. It was dug inside the dolmen. That means this wasn't a structure built over a well. The well was added later, or perhaps the chamber was reshaped to include it. But why? What were they drawing water for inside a tomb? That well is a mystery to this day. It doesn't quite line up with other burial practices of the time. And this dolmen isn't aligned with the solstices like so many other megalithic sites in Europe. Instead, it points directly toward a nearby mountain called La Peña de los Enamorados, the Lover's Rock. From the entrance of the dolmen, the mountain rises in the distance, shaped like the profile of a sleeping man. Coincidence? Maybe. But when you stand in the dolmen and look out toward that mountain, it feels too perfect to be an accident. Perhaps this place was never just a tomb. Maybe it was something else entirely. The strange thing is there are no confirmed human remains in the dolmen of Manga. Unlike other burial mounds where bones and ashes and offerings are discovered here, there's just the stone and that well empty silent. Some researchers think it may have been a kind of sacred space not for death but for something else, a transition, maybe a ceremony, a place to connect with something deeper. Maybe water was used in the rituals. Maybe it was symbolic, or maybe it was meant for something else entirely. Let's stop here for a moment. Just breathe in that thought. Close your eyes and imagine, standing deep in that stone chamber lit only by the faintest shaft of sunlight coming down the corridor. The echo of your breath, the soft drip of water in the dark, and nothing else. The dolmen of Manga reminds us that not all mysteries are loud. Some hide quietly in the earth waiting. They don't beg to be solved. They just are. In today's world where everything screams for attention, where lights flash and headlines shout and timelines move faster than thought, this quiet mound of stone offers something we often forget we need. Stillness. And maybe that's the secret. Maybe what's buried under all those tons of sandstone isn't just a well or a hidden chamber. Maybe it's something far more valuable. A pause, a breath, a space where time slows down and memory hums beneath the rock. So the next time you hear someone say Europe's ancient history is all cathedrals and castles, tell them about Manga, the stone giant that whispers instead of shouts and whose silence still has questions we can't quite answer. Masuda no Apune, the rock that was never meant to sail. Tucked away in a quiet corner of Japan's Nar prefecture lies something that doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the world. It isn't a shrine. It isn't a temple. It's not even a ruin in the traditional sense. No, this one is different. It's just a rock. But not just any rock. Imagine a giant block of granite, perfectly carved, resting on a hillside. It measures over 11 meters in length, nearly 8 meters wide, and 4.5 meters tall. That's the size of a small house made entirely out of a single stone. And that stone, it's shaped like a ship that's never touched water, a ship with no sails, no mast, and no way to move. They call it Masuda no Afun, The rock ship of Masuda. But what is it? Noon knows for sure. Not even close. Let's stand beside it for a moment. Look at its size. Feel the presence it carries. You can touch it. Cold granite worn smooth by centuries of rain and wind, yet still solid, still stubborn. The top is flat, carved with two rectangular holes perfectly etched into its surface. Not natural, not erosion. These were cut carefully by someone. But why? There's no inscription, no markings, no forgotten characters to decipher. Just a silent stone boat that refuses to tell you why it's here. And that silence is part of what makes it sound settling. You see? This monolith doesn't match the building style of any known civilization in the region. Not from the time it's assumed to have come from, somewhere around 1,400 to 400 years ago. And not from earlier periods either. It's completely unique. It doesn't serve a clear religious purpose. It doesn't appear to be part of a larger site or structure. It simply sits there on a hill alone, immovable. When archaeologists first encountered it, they didn't know what to make of it. They still don't. Some say it might have been a burial monument, though no grave has ever been found beneath or around it. Others believe it was a kind of celestial marker aligned with solstices or stars. But when they measured its angles and compared them with the movement of the sun and stars, nothing obvious lined up. And then there are the holes. Two perfect rectangular holes cut into the top. Deep, precise, and perfectly measured. They're not accidental. They weren't made by weather or erosion. These are tools marks, purposeful. Someone, maybe a group, spent days, maybe weeks carving them into solid granite. But for what? You can look through them, shine a light, drop a pebble. They don't connect to anything below. They aren't chimneys or air shafts. They're not ritual altars or drain holes. They're just holes. What if it was never meant to be finished? Some theories suggest the stone was left behind mid-construction, that it was part of a larger building plan, maybe a shrine or fortress. But there's no sign of quarrying nearby. No debris, no secondary blocks, no foundations, nothing but this one stone alone. It's not part of a city, not part of an acropolis, not even part of a known trade route. The strangest theory that it predates written history in the region, that it may have been made by a people we no longer have a name for, a culture whose language, tools, and beliefs are completely gone, leaving behind only this stone as a trace of their existence. But maybe it doesn't matter who built it. Maybe it's the mystery itself that holds value. You stand before it in the fading light of afternoon and you realize something. It's not trying to explain itself. It doesn't need to. It's content just being. There's a kind of peace in that, in the not knowing, and maybe that's the point. In our world today, we rush to explain everything, to label, to define, to categorize. But here in this small town in Japan, a massive granite monolith asks you to stop, to breathe, to look, and to not understand. Because understanding isn't always the goal. Sometimes the mystery is what keeps the past alive. They say the rock ship of Masuda will outlast us all. It's already older than any living person. And long after we're gone, long after our cities and satellites and machines are dust, that rock will still be there watching the sunrise, listening to the wind, waiting. And maybe someone else, someone in another age, will find it and ask the same question we do today. What is it? Why? And the stone, silent and still, will give the same answer it gives now. Nothing, just the weight of time, just the shape of mystery. The Tia stele, Ethiopia's silent symbols. The rolling green highlands of southern Ethiopia. Just outside the small town of Tia, a quiet field stretches out beneath the sun. It's easy to pass by. Most travelers do. But tucked within this unassuming land stands something strange, something silent still, and endlessly curious. There are no grand temples here. No majestic pyramids, no towering stone walls, just stones. Rough upright slabs rising out of the earth, each one positioned deliberately and marked. They're called the Tia stele. To the untrained eye, they might seem like gravestones or markers. About 36 of them visible in a tight cluster, many more hidden across the wider region. Some lean, some stand tall, most are worn. But on closer inspection, you begin to notice something odd. These stones are engraved not randomly, not accidentally, but with deep intentional carvings, symbols, shapes, patterns that don't immediately reveal their meaning. The most common is a sort of sword-like figure, long, narrow, sometimes crossed. On others, you'll see what looks like plant motifs, circles, geometric impressions, or even something resembling eyes. But no one knows what they mean, and no one knows who carved them. Dating back as far as the 12th century, and possibly even earlier, these stones mark the presence of a forgotten culture, a people who had the tools, the ideas, and the reason to mark their memory into the earth, but left behind no written language, no names, no legends, just the stele. Archaeologists agree that the site is a cemetery of some kind. Beneath many of the stones are buried individuals, some believed to be warriors given the sword engravings. But this is all interpretation, guesswork. The truth is, no one left instructions. The culture that made these stones is still largely anonymous. The Tia site is one of many in this region, but it's the most striking, designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, not for what we know about it, but for how much we don't. There's something haunting about that. To walk among the stele is to stand in a field of echoes. Each stone seems to point at something just out of reach. Were these markers for leaders, guardians, fallen heroes? Or perhaps the stones themselves were part of a larger ritual meant to guard, to guide, or to preserve. The swords carved into the stone are some of the most debated symbols. They're stylized, not realistic blades, but impressions, perhaps ceremonial. Some show double swords, others crossed, and on a few stones, these swords are surrounded by additional marks, dots, crescents, or what may be stylized flora. Each one feels like a signature, but whose? And why swords? There's little evidence of large-scale warfare in this region during that era. Some believe the swords might represent status, not violence. Perhaps these were protectors or spiritual warriors. Others suggest the imagery could be symbolic, meant to represent honor, courage, or the journey of the soul. But again, these are theories. We're dealing with a culture lost to time, not because it failed, but because time moved on, and no one preserved its story in writing. The taste challenged the way we think about legacy. They don't speak. They don't explain, they just remain. And in that quiet, they leave room for something modern archaeology doesn't always like: imagination. We've grown used to facts, to certainties, to timelines, maps, and clean categories. But TIA doesn't offer that. Instead, it invites you to listen, not with your ears, but with your sense of curiosity. You find yourself wondering, why this location? Why these shapes? Why so many of the same sword motif? And why do some have none at all? And then the biggest question, why remember the dead like this? What was so important to engrave into stone but not into words? It's easy to romanticize lost cultures, but Tia doesn't need embellishment. The stones are simple, solid, humble in form, yet each one carries weight not just physically, but symbolically. They feel heavy with memory, heavy with something we can't define. Even today, locals walk past them with a mix of reverence and detachment. They're part of the landscape like old trees or hills. People acknowledge them, but they don't always know the story either. And perhaps that's the point. Not all knowledge survives in books. Some survives in stone, in symbols, in decisions that someone somewhere once made. And that time, weather and silence could never erase. As the wind moves through the field of Tia, the stones stand still, watching, waiting. Not for discovery maybe, but for understanding. They've seen hundreds of seasons, countless footsteps, generations of humans passing through. And they're still here. They will likely remain long after we're gone. So, if you ever find yourself in Ethiopia, traveling through the green ridges and dusty trails near Tia, stop for a moment, step out of the car, walk the small path into the open field. Look at the stones, don't try to read them. Just observe, feel their presence, and know that even in the silence of time, some memories refuse to fade. Rujam el-Hiri, the circles that watch the sky. In the wind-swept golden heights of northern Israel, far from the noise of modern life, lies a place that barely makes a sound. Flat, empty plain, sparse grass, open sky, and then, all at once you see it. A wide formation of stones, strange, ordered, old. At first, it doesn't quite register. It's flat, almost blended into the ground. But slowly your eyes begin to trace the outline. Circles layered, wide, concentric, and in the center, a mound. This is Rouge el-Hiri, a name that means stone heap of the wild cat in Arabic. But what it truly represents is far more enigmatic. To archaeologists, it's one of the most mysterious sites in the Middle East. To astronomers, It's a ancient calendar frozen in rock. To visitors, it's a quiet puzzle under the open sky. Built over 5,000 years ago, possibly as far back as 3000 BCE, Rujam al-Hiri is a megalithic monument constructed from over 42,000 basalt rocks carefully arranged into 5 concentric circles. From above, it resembles a massive stone bullseye, but no one knows why it was made. It isn't a fortress. It isn't a tomb, at least not originally, and it wasn't a village. So what was it? The structure covers more than 4 acres. The largest circle is almost 160 across, and in the center sits a tall mound of rubble nearly 5 marai, with a small inner chamber that appears to have been added centuries after the main structure was already in place. So the central mound may be a burial site, but the rest of the complex clearly predates it. That raises a haunting question. What purpose did these giant stone rings serve before they became a grave? Many believe the answer lies in the sky. The architecture of Rujam al-Hiri is aligned with celestial events. On the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, sunlight pierces through one of the narrow eastern openings, traveling across the stone corridor and striking a particular point within the structure. In other words, it was built to watch the sky, to track the sun, to measure time and shadows and light like Stonehenge in England or Nabla in Egypt. Ruj al-Hiri may have been part of an ancient astronomical system, a calendar etched into the land. But there's something different here. The circles don't rise into the air like pillars. They remain low, silent, subtle. From the ground, they feel more like a pathway, like you're moving through a maze, a ritual journey. Could it have been a ceremonial site, a place for seasonal gatherings, a location where people came not just to observe the sun, but to feel its cycles, to mark time with more than numbers through experience, motion, and space? The name Ruhiri is just one of many. In Hebrew, it's also called Gilgal Raphim, the Wheel of the Giants. Some legends even connect the structure to ancient giants mentioned in biblical texts. Others whisper stories of spirits, curses, or lost civilizations that vanished before recorded history. But as with many places that predate writing, all we have now is stone and space and silence. Archaeological teams have studied the site for decades, and yet many of their reports return with more questions than answers. Why was it built here on this specific flat plain in the Golden Heights? Why such an enormous effort? The basalt used in construction is not easy to move, and yet tens of thousands of heavy stones were carefully positioned, stacked, adjusted. There is evidence that the builders may have shaped or trimmed some of the rock to fit more precisely into the circular pattern. This wasn't random and it wasn't casual. Whoever made this, they knew what they were doing. They were tracking something, recording something, perhaps communicating with something. Some researchers speculate that Rujam al-Hiri was also used for burial rituals, not just of individuals, but of ideas of beliefs of cycles. Others think it may have had an acoustic function that sound when spoken, or sung from the center, echoed through the walls in a deliberate way. There's no hard proof, but the theory persists because the truth is no one knows for certain. What we do know is that no inscriptions were left behind. No tools, no signs of permanent settlement. Just the stones in the sky. Today, visitors can walk through the narrow stone corridors, moving from circle to circle as the ancients once did. There are no signs to guide you, no explanations posted. The experience feels untouched, like stepping into a dream that someone else had thousands of years ago. In the silence, you begin to feel it. The wind moving across the stones, the sun rising and falling above you. Time passing just as it always has. The stones remain, each one placed with care, enduring erosion, war, and weather. But their story that may have faded, or maybe it hasn't. Maybe their story was never in words. Maybe it was meant to be felt in the movement of the earth, in the return of the seasons, in the shadow of the sun passing through the eastern gate again and again for thousands of years. Ruhiri doesn't offer you facts. It offers you stillness, a place to think, a chance to stand in the middle of a question that hasn't been answered in 5 millennia and maybe never will be. The giants' graves of Arzaka, Sardinia's silent witnesses. In the quiet hills of northern Sardinia, nestled among olive trees and wind-shaped stone, lies a land that doesn't speak much anymore. But once perhaps it thundered with footsteps, or so the legends say, scattered around the town of Arzaka. Not far from the island's rocky coastline, there are rows of massive stone tombs arched, long weathered by time. To the local people, they are known as Tomba dei Giganti, the giants' graves. And at first glance, that name makes perfect sense. Some of these tombs stretch nearly 30 meters in length. Their entrance stones stand upright, towering 3 to 4 meters high with curved tops and mysterious engravings. Wide passageways stretch out behind them, lined with carefully positioned stones that gradually taper inward, forming a long corridor leading to the heart of the earth. These structures are ancient, very ancient. They were built by the Nuragic civilization, a mysterious culture that flourished on Sardinia, beginning around 1800 BCE, CE. Long before the Romans arrived, before Carthage, before almost any written record touched this land, the Nuragic people left behind thousands of megalithic towers, sacred wells, and communal tombs, some of the most well-preserved Bronze Age architecture in Europe. But among all their works, the giants' graves feel different, not just because of their size, but because of their mystery, because of their silence, because of the stories that cling to them like the moss between their stones. When early travelers first encountered these strange tombs, they didn't have carbon dating. They didn't have archaeological frameworks or cultural context. What they had were eyes and instincts, and the chilling realization that these tombs were far too large for any ordinary human. Surely only a giant could have been buried there. And so the legends grew. Local folklore spoke of a time when giants roamed the hills of Sardinia. Creatures larger than life with strength beyond imagining. Some stories called them the Shardana warrior giants, who once ruled the island before vanishing into myth. Others whispered that these tombs were not graves at all, but portals, gateways to another world, a place where ancient beings still rest, untouched by time. Of course, archaeologists offer a different view. They tell us that the giants' graves were collective burial sites built to house the remains of entire communities. Each tomb may have held dozens of individuals placed carefully inside over many years. The long, narrow corridor represented a symbolic journey, a passage from the world of the living to that of the dead. The massive central stones, often shaped like a doorway or astellized head, were likely used for rituals, places where the living gathered to speak to the dead, to honor them, and perhaps to ask for guidance. In fact, one theory suggests that the curved stone facades mimic the shape of a bull's horns, a sacred symbol of power and fertility in many Mediterranean cultures. Still, even with these interpretations, one thing remains certain. The experience of standing before a giant's grave is something entirely its own. You approach the tomb. It rises slowly from the earth like a stone ship frozen mid-sail embedded in the land. The entrance stone, the stela, looms overhead. Some are plain, others carved with faint ancient symbols, spirals, circles, eyes. And behind it the corridor stretches into the earth. Dark, narrow, quiet. These stones are cold, heavy, timeless. And whether or not giants were ever real, the people who built these graves believed in something greater than themselves. You can feel it in every carefully placed slab, every alignment, every silent inch of passage. Some tombs face the sunrise. Others align with lunar cycles or star paths. This wasn't guesswork. It was intention, memory, belief. And yet, we know almost nothing about the Nuric people themselves. They left no writing, no books, only stones and tombs and towers and silence. Over 800 of these giants' graves have been found across Sardinia. But Arzacina holds some of the most well-preserved tombs, like Kaduveku, with its impressive granite stele and near-perfect curve, offer a glimpse into an architectural mind that was both ritualistic and deeply symbolic. Inside the burial chambers, no bodies remain, no tools, no bones, only the echo of air. Time has taken the rest, but sometimes the absence of answers is the answer, because even today, locals speak of strange energy near the tombs. Some visitors report feeling a vibration when standing between the upright stones. Others feel a weight in the air, a pressure subtle but unmistakable. There are those who come not as tourists, but as pilgrims, believing the graves hold healing energy or ancient memory, or truth not yet uncovered. And perhaps they do. The Nuridic culture eventually disappeared, long before the rise of Rome. The reason for their decline remains a mystery. Climate change, warfare, migration. No one knows for sure. But their stones remain, their graves remain, their silence remains. And that silence has a gravity. It draws you in. It makes you look deeper. not just into history, but into possibility. Who were these builders? What did they see in the stars? What did they believe about life after death? Were they simply honoring their dead? Or did they feel somehow that the earth itself was alive, and that placing the dead in its heart brought balance to the world? These questions are not answered in textbooks. They're felt here among the hills of Arzaka, among stones that are older than memory, yet strangely familiar among tombs that may or may not have held giants, but certainly held something larger than life. You step back from the tomb. The sun is lower now. The wind moves through the grass and the grave watches silently as it has for over 3,000 years. Not just a tomb, not just a monument, but a reminder that the past is never truly gone. It's just sleeping. No passage tomb. The tomb that knew Thesky. They say the stars remember everything, even the things humans forgot, long before modern telescopes, long before the age of maps and machines. Someone, or perhaps some entire group, built a tomb that seems to understand the sky better than we do now. It's older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, a place quietly waiting in the Irish countryside, under a green grassy mound shaped like time itself. Welcome to Nath. This is not just Adam, it's a stone memory. A message buried beneath layers of soil shaped by human hands more than 5,000 years ago. And somehow, even today, it knows when the solstice is coming. It knows how to trace the moon. It knows how to whisper through stones that have no words, no mouths, and yet somehow still speak. Take a deep breath, let the ancient mist settle over your shoulders like a shawl, and let's begin. If you're enjoying this journey so far, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me keep these midnight mysteries alive. And feel free to drop a sleepy comment below when your eyes get heavy. I read everyone, even the drowsy ones. Now the Natham isn't alone. It's part of a sacred trio nestled in the Bow Valley of Ireland, New Grange, Dow, and Nath. But there's something about Nath that feels different. Less visited, less understood, almost as if it prefers it that way. On the surface, it looks like a gentle hill, grass-covered, birds passing overhead, sheep occasionally grazing nearby. But under that mound lies a world that was crafted with obsessive precision. 2 long passageways cut deep into the tomb's body, one pointing east, the other west, like arms reaching out to catch the light at sunrise and sunset. The eastern passage is the older of the two, and it's the longer one, stretching 34 mm into the heart of the mound. When you walk through it, you can feel the shape of the ancient world pressing in. The stones are close, but they're not clumsy. They were placed with care. Massive slabs of rock carved with spirals, zigzags, lozines, and circles. Some believe these were just decorations, but the more you look at them, the more they resemble something else. Calendars, star charts, encoded thoughts. Think of it. Someone thousands of years ago staring at the sky for years, watching the moon rise and fall, the sun shift its angle each season, and carving that knowledge into rocks so it would never be lost. When the sunlight touches the stones inside during the equinox, it feels intentional. It feels like the earth is breathing in rhythm with the sky. That alignment, it didn't happen by accident. Whoever built this structure knew geometry. They knew astronomy. They knew patience. But here's the part that stays with you. They didn't write anything down. No books, no scrolls, no tablets, just stone. Stone that doesn't age like words do. Stone that doesn't fade in the rain. Stone that outlasts empires. Let's lie back for a moment in the grass just outside. Now imagine the way it would have looked 5 millennia ago. No highways, no noise, just the wind, the insects, and a rising mound in the distance. It must have drawn people to it like a magnet. And maybe it still does. Inside, archaeologists have uncovered over 200 carved stones, more than any other Neolithic site in Europe. Some of these carvings are dizzying spirals within spirals, paths that loop like thought mazes. Were they maps of the stars, symbols of rebirth, or perhaps just art? Something made by hands guided by wonder. You feel it, don't you? That low hum. Not from machines, from history. Nath has over 17 satellite tombs surrounding the main mound, like planets around a sun, each one smaller, but no less intentional. Some believe these were added later. Others say they were always part of the plan. And then there's the mystery of the moon. Some researchers believe that Nath may have been built to track lunar cycles. Unlike New Grange, which is sharply aligned with the winter solstice, Nath's passages suggest something deeper, slower. The pull of the moon, not the sun, That would make it one of the earliest lunar observatories in human history. Sit with that. 5,000 years ago, someone may have been tracking the moon's 18.6-year cycle, a cycle most people today don't even know exists. They did this without computers, without calculators, just eyes, memory, and stone. Who were they? What language did they speak? What dreams did they leave behind in those spirals? And then there's the burial. Yes, Nath is a tomb. At least that's what we call it. Archaeologists have found cremated remains inside. More than 200 individuals were laid to rest here, their ashes placed carefully in stone basins. But even that feels more ritual than final. Like the dead weren't just buried, they were returned. Returned to a cycle, to the earth, to the stars. You start to understand how these ancient builders may have thought of life, and death not as a beginning and an end, but as a spiral. Just like the carvings always returning, always flowing. And now lying here in the softness of your room, maybe with the glow of a screen dimming, by the minute you can feel that spiral pulling you in too. You're part of it. The same moon that rose over Mouth is still rising now. The same stars that watched its builders work still blink in the sky above you. This isn't just a sight. It's a whisper, and you've heard it. And maybe that's enough for tonight. The megaliths of Gang, Korea's forgotten stones. There are places in the world where silence feels different. Not just quiet, but ancient, heavy. Like the land itself remembers something we don't. In the rolling fields of Gang, South Korea, there's one such place. A plain scattered with giant stones, each one standing like a forgotten sentence. There are no crowds, no neon lights, just the earth, the wind, and over 1,000 dolmens stretching across the countryside. Welcome to Gachang! You wouldn't notice them at first. At a distance, they almost look like giant stone mushrooms, or simple tables made of massive rocks. But these dolmens are far from simple. They're deliberate. They're heavy. Some of them weigh over 100 tons. And no one knows for sure who put them here or why. As the light fades and the evening breeze passes over the land, these stones don't speak, but they seem to watch like sentinels, like memories too old to translate. And now here you are, resting with them for a while. Let's begin. This part of Korea, you'll find one of the densest concentrations of dolmens anywhere on Earth. Gachang is home to more than 1,000 megalithic tombs, built somewhere between 1000 BCE and 3000 BCE. That means these stones have been here longer than many written languages, longer than paper, longer than most myths still remembered. And the most incredible part, we still don't know exactly how they were built or by whom. Imagine trying to lift a stone the size of a small bus with no cranes, no iron tools, and no modern machines. Some of the dolmens at Gachang are so massive, it's difficult even today to figure out how they were moved. Yet thousands of them were placed here with astonishing consistency, aligned, balanced, upright. But the builders left no text behind, no drawings, no names, just stone, just intention. Some believe these dolmens were tombs. Others say they were altars. A few suggest they marked sacred ground or served as sky calendars. All of these could be true or none of them. The Gachang site is part of a larger group of dolmen fields across Korea, along with Hwasun and Gonghwa. But Gachang is the largest. As you walk among them, you start to notice patterns. Some dolmens are long and flat, others are thick and short. Many sit on smaller supporting stones like giant stone tables. Some are toppled as if time itself got tired of holding them up. And yet even the broken ones feel intentional, like a language made of weight and shape. Lie back for a moment. Let your mind drift. Think about the hands that once touched these stones. What kind of people were they? How did they choose which stones to move? Did they chant while they worked? Did they laugh? Did they cry when the stones finally stood? We don't know, but the silence of the dolmens isn't empty. It's full. It's layered. If you sit with them long enough, it starts to feel like they're waiting for something, waiting to be understood. Or perhaps waiting for us to stop trying so hard to understand and just feel instead. When archaeologists excavated some of these dolmens, they found tools, pottery, and in a few cases bones. These clues suggest a burial purpose, but they raise just as many questions as they answer. Why this design? Why such huge stones for the dead? And how could such an effort have been coordinated without any known writing or centralized government? Some researchers have proposed a long-lost culture, one that spanned the Korean peninsula, and possibly beyond that understood stonework at a level we still haven't fully grasped. And others believe the dolmens were part of a ritual tradition, a kind of sacred performance passed down through generations where each new stone was a link in a chain of memory. You can almost imagine it. A long line of people walking together across the fields, carrying ropes, rolling logs, singing to the sky. A great stone at the center of their attention, slowly inching forward like a sleeping giant being nudged into place. Then silence. And now 3,000 years later, we still walk among them. Here's something that makes Gong even more mysterious. The sheer concentration of dolmens in one small area. Some fields shave over 100 dolmens in a single cluster. It's not random. It feels like a message, but in a language made entirely of stone. If you listen close, you might feel the echo of that message in your body, not in your ears. They say dolmens were the graves of chiefs. Maybe. Or perhaps they were memory markers, giant bookmarks left in the land to preserve something bigger than just bones. Some of the stones have peculiar features, grooves, cup marks, even faint lines carved into their surface. Were they symbols, coordinates, ritual marks, or were they just the fingerprints of time? Even the experts don't agree. And maybe that's what makes Gang so powerful. It doesn't offer clear answers. It offers stillness. It offers wonder. It offers a glimpse into a chapter of human history that feels half dreamed and half lost. One where people could lift mountains not with machines, but with patience, with belief, with generations working side by side. As you lie here, maybe your eyes are growing heavy, and maybe you're starting to feel it. The slow heartbeat of the earth beneath the dolmens. A rhythm older than memory, older than names, just stone and time, and silence that isn't silent at all. Sleep well, traveler. You've walked with the stones tonight, and they never forget of Barry Henge, the stones that circle the forgotten. There are places in the world where the silence is so deep, it doesn't feel like emptiness. Feels like a pause between breaths, like the land itself is holding something, waiting. In the quiet countryside of Wiltshire, England, there's one such place. A massive ring of ancient stones, hidden not by forests or mountains, but simply by time, larger than Stonehenge, older than many known civilizations. And still, nobody knows why it was built. This is a Barry. And as you lie back, listening to the slow rhythm of your breath, you're not just falling asleep. You're falling backward through centuries, through seasons, through stories carved not into paper, but into stone. Let's begin. Avebury is the largest stone circle in all of Europe. Imagine that for a moment. Not Stonehenge, not Carnac, but here, quietly resting in green fields and sheep-dotted meadows. A circle so vast that it contains an entire village within it. Houses, roads, trees, all sitting inside a 4,000-year-old monument that still refuses to explain itself. Most visitors come here expecting a simple ring of stones. But Avebury isn't simple. It's vast. It's layered. It's alive in a way most ruins are not. The site consists of a massive circular ditch and bank called a henge, nearly 400 meters across, with 3 separate stone circles inside it. Some of the standing stones are over 40 tons lifted and placed upright during a time when there were no wheels, no iron tools, just determination. And the most haunting part, no one knows what the henge was for. There are no records, no writings, just stones and questions. So many questions. Some believe Avar was a place of worship. Others think it was a calendar, a ceremonial path, or even a map of the stars carved into the land. Some say it was a sacred space for honoring ancestors. A few believe it was a meeting point for travelers and tribes. But every theory leaves something out. Every answer leaves something unanswered. And maybe that's the point. Barry isn't a puzzle. It's a presence. And as you lie there drifting deeper, you can almost feel it watching. Not in a fearful way, but like an old friend you've just forgotten the name of. The stones at Avebury are strange. They're not neat. They're not symmetrical. Some are tall and thin. Others are squat and wide, some lean. Some seem to ripple with the marks of wind and rain. Many were once broken down or buried by villagers who feared them, or simply needed stone forebuilding. But many still stand like sentinels, like silent notes in a forgotten melody. Walk slowly through the circle in your mind, past moss-covered boulders that have seen the sun rise over the same hills for more than 4,000 years, past quiet corners where the grass grows thick and the air feels different. This isn't a ruin, it's a rhythm. It's still here for a reason. And maybe that reason has nothing to do with us figuring it out. Maybe it was never meant to be understood in the way we want. Maybe it was meant to be felt, like a drum beat echoing from the earth, reminding us that time isn't always linear, and history isn't always written in ink. Some of the stones are aligned in pairs. Others form avenues that stretch out toward other ancient sites, like Silbury Hill, the largest prehistoric man-made mound in Europe, just a short walk away, or West Kennet Long Barrero, a 5,600-year-old tomb hidden among the grass. It's almost as if all these ancient places were part of a larger system, a landscape that functioned like a book, with each monument a page, each circle a chapter. But that book was never finished, or maybe we just forgot how to read it. Close your eyes now. Feel the cold breath of stone on your skin. Imagine the people who once walked here, not in costumes, not as cavemen or druids, but as humans, tired, hopeful, holding torches, carrying children, laughing, mourning. They left no written records, but they left the stones. And somehow that feels more permanent. Abury isn't loud like Stonehenge. It doesn't draw crowds in the same way. And yet those who visit often say they feel something strange. A pull, a presence, a sense that the land is remembering things you've never known. Maybe it's just imagination, or maybe it's something deeper, something quieter. In the 17th century, a man named John Aubrey stumbled upon Aubrey and was stunned. He couldn't believe something so huge, so ancient, had been almost completely forgotten. He described it as one of the greatest wonders of prehistoric Britain. And yet even he couldn't unlock its secrets, nor could the archaeologists who came later. Because every excavation, every dig seems to raise more questions than it answers. Why was the ditch dug from solid chalk using antler picks? Why were the stones placed in two distinct styles, some tall and others wide? Why does the circle seem to align with celestial events, yet not in a precise mathematical way? The more you ask, the softer the answers become. And maybe here at Avaberry, that's how it's meant to be. Not a place of answers, but a place of rest. A place where time slows down and the earth feels old enough to dream. As you drift off now, feel the weight of the stones pressing not on your body, but on your thoughts. Not heavy, just grounding, just ancient. They've waited here for thousands of years through rain and war and silence, and they'll still be here tomorrow. Still watching the stars, still circling the forgotten, still holding space for something we lost long ago. Dolmens of the North Caucasus, precision tombs in the silent mountains, in the quiet folds of the North Caucasus Mountains, where the winds carry more than just the chill of high altitudes. There lie ancient stone structures that seem older than memory itself, scattered across hillsides and valleys, sometimes hidden beneath moss and bramble, sometimes standing proudly in clearings as if waiting to be remembered. These megalithic structures are called dolmens. No signs point to them. No grand roads lead tourists in their direction. And yet they exist, thousands of them, each built with a level of precision and care that seems to defy the tools we know existed in their time. These aren't just piles of stones. These are tombs constructed over 4,000 years ago using massive slabs of stone, so perfectly aligned that even today, after all these centuries, the joints remain tight, weather-resistant and silent. We do not know who built them, their language, their customs. Even the names of their people have faded from history. But the dolmens remain, whispering a forgotten story through their presence alone. Approaching one of these dolmens, there's a strange sense that time is bending. The stones are tall and wide, yet smooth, carved carefully from sandstone. Many have round portals cut into the front-facing slab, perfect circles sometimes less than a meter wide, like windows into another world. These openings are often sealed by stone plugs, as if keeping something sacred locked within. You reach out to touch the cold stone, and it's difficult not to wonder who stood here before. What hands carved this? What lives passed through that doorway and into eternity? The dolmens are scattered across the region, from the Black Sea coastlines to the mountain ridges deeper inland. Their designs are similar, suggesting a shared cultural memory. But the purposes they served remain unconfirmed. Some say they were tombs for elders. Others believe they were ceremonial chambers used in rituals lost to time. A few researchers speculate about astronomical alignments, that the dolmens were positioned to capture light on solstices or to track star patterns through their portals. But even that remains guesswork. Inside, many dolmens contain skeletal remains, often more than one person, sometimes generations layered together. Alongside the bones, archaeologists have discovered pottery shards, bronze tools, beads, and other simple offerings. These weren't just places of burial. They were places of memory, of gathering, perhaps even of guidance. Picture this: a family returning to the same dolmen across generations, speaking softly to those inside, leaving tributes, perhaps seeking wisdom or peace. The interior of each dolmen is cool, still, and tightly enclosed, often no more than 2 meters across. Yet being inside one doesn't feel cramped. It feels protected, designed, as if the builders knew exactly what they wanted to create. Not just a tomb, but a space that held meaning beyond death. A place for reflection, for presence, for connection. And here's where the mystery deepens. The stones used in these dolmens are not found naturally in the exact locations where the dolmens stand. They were quarried, shaped, and transported, sometimes afill, over uneven terrain. And these slabs can weigh several tons. This means that their creators not only understood geometry, alignment, and structural stability, but also had systems of labor, engineering, and planning far beyond what's commonly assumed of prehistoric cultures in this region. Yet no written records accompany the dolmens. No inscriptions explain their purpose. No scrolls or tablets have been unearthed. Only the stones remain, silent, still intentional. Some dolmens appear solitary, standing alone in small forest clearings half buried in moss and roots. Others appear in clusters, lines, or circles, like a deliberate arrangement we can no longer decipher. One such site near the village of Zay features a perfect ring of dolmens, each facing inward, like a gathering of forgotten voices. Some have collapsed over time. Others stand as they always have, weathered but unyielding. When you walk through these places, there's no sensation of ruins. It feels more like stepping into a place that's simply waiting. What continues to puzzle modern researchers is how such ancient people managed such precision. The stones are fitted so closely that in many dolmens you cannot slide even a thin blade between them. No binding agents were used, just raw, deliberate craft. Some scholars suggest advanced knowledge of stone carving techniques. Others wonder whether the builders possessed lost technologies, perhaps passed down orally and forgotten after the culture declined. But even as researchers theorize, the dolmens refuse to reveal their truth. Legends among local communities speak of giants who once roamed the land and built these stone houses as their shelters. Others tell of dwarves or ancient spirits or even celestial beings. Myths linger where knowledge fades, and in the case of the Cowess's dolmens, myth is all we're left with. The builders disappeared, leaving behind only these mysterious monuments. Some dolmens appear more recent, possibly built during a late phase of the culture, but others, especially the ones most precisely shaped, may date back as far as 3000 BCE. That places them in the same time frame as Stonehenge, the Great Pyramids, and other global megalithic sites. And yet they are far less studied, far less known. That's part of what makes them so quietly haunting. They didn't demand attention. They didn't broadcast their presence. They were simply there, and they still are. If you were to spend a night beside one, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the wind move through the trees and across the stone, you might begin to feel the pull of that ancient silence. Not fear, not unease, just a kind of deep unspoken remembering. As if the land itself hasn't forgotten, even if we have. The dolmens of the North Caucasus remind us that not everything powerful needs to shout. Some truths are carried in stone, whispered by wind, and preserved through stillness. So tonight, as you rest, carry this thought with you. Somewhere, high in a quiet mountain pass, there stands a structure built by people who are now nameless, yet not forgotten. They carved their memory into stone and placed it where time cannot erase it. They left no story behind, only presence. Let that be enough. Let the silence of the dolmens settle beside you like a guardian. Let it remind you that even the quietest things can hold the deepest truths. The men here of Champ, do they say some stones remember not with words, not with pictures, but with presence. There's something about the way time sits heavy around the men here of Champ Doent, a monolithic stone standing alone in the quiet pastures of Brittany, France. Locals pass by it daily. Children play near it, birds land briefly on its weathered top, but no one really forgets that it's there. It has stood there longer than anything else around it, longer than any home, longer than any church, longer even than the country that surrounds it. And they say it wasn't placed there by men. This great standing stone, more than 9 meters tall, weighing hundreds of tons, isn't just a geological feature. It's a mystery of purpose and a legend of warning. And as the sun rises and sets across the fields of Dratine, casting long shadows over the soft green, the menhir of Champdoant remains unmoving, unblinking, and unknowable, as if waiting. We begin where many stories begin, by trying to measure the unmeasurable. Archaeologists, geologists, and scholars have studied the menhir and determined that it likely dates back to the Neolithic period, somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. That puts it in the same era as the earliest stone structures in the British Isles like Avebury, and even older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. But the menhir of Champdoant was not part of a larger circle or complex. It stands alone in the middle of a field, as if deliberately separated from the rest of the world. The name itself, Champdoant, translates ominously to Field of Sorrow, a strange name for such a peaceful pastoral place. But the legends surrounding this ancient stone suggest the name was well earned. One story says that the stone appeared during a great quarrel between two brothers. Their disagreement had escalated into violence, and as they struck each other in fury, the skies opened and a blinding light shot down from the heavens, planting the menhir in the ground between them. The fight ended. The brothers vanished. The stone remained. A divine warning. Some say a reminder that conflict breeds only sorrow. Others claim the menhir rises a little higher each year, ever so slightly, as if climbing slowly toward the sky. The day it disappears completely, it's said the world will end. But not all who come to the menhir believe in omens. Some come simply to feel, to stand in the presence of something older than time itself, to place a hand against the rough granite surface and try just for a moment to touch the past. When you do, it's not silence you hear, but a hum, faint, deep, almost like a breath held for millennia. Geologically, the stone is a type of granite not found in the immediate area. That alone raises questions. Transporting such a massive block of stone over distance without modern equipment is no small feat. How did ancient people with only primitive tools manage to quarry it, move it and raise it upright in perfect balance? And why here? Some researchers speculate that the location was chosen for astronomical reasons. Like many megalithic structures, the stone may be aligned with celestial bodies, perhaps the solstice sun, or particular constellations visible during seasonal changes. Others argue its position corresponds with ancient energy lines, or ley lines believed by some to be the veins of the earth. These theories remain speculative, but for those who stand in front of it, the energy feels real, not imagined, as if the ground beneath the menhir isn't quite the same as the land around it. Then there's the Christian overlay, a layer of reinterpretation that came centuries later. As Christianity spread through Brittany, it absorbed many of the older pagan symbols, but the menhir proved resistant. Priests couldn't explain it nor remove it, so instead they tried to transform it. A small cross was carved into its side, an attempt to claim it. But the stone remains indifferent. The cross is barely visible now, worn smooth by weather and time. The original presence of the stone remains unchallenged, quiet but undeniable. As night falls on the fields around the menhir of Champdoant, the wind picks up slightly. The sound of crickets begins to build, and the warmth of the day slowly drains into the cool breath of dusk. In this twilight, the stone seems to shift, not physically, but in feeling. It's as if its shadow stretches farther, as if the stories it holds, whatever they are, move a little closer to the surface. A local woman once said that the menhir listens. She wasn't speaking poetically. She meant it plainly, that when she was a child, and she'd sit near it for hours, she could hear things, not voices exactly, but impressions, as if something ancient and slow was trying to speak without words. Not malevolent, not kind, just ancient. And maybe that's the most accurate way to describe this monolith. Not sacred, not cursed, but deeply, deeply ancient. It predates written language. It predates nations. It predates even most of the myths we know today. And yet it is still here. The people who built it or placed it are long gone. Their homes are dust. Their tools are forgotten. Their names are nowhere to be found. But the menhir remains, their final word. Carved in stone, not with symbols or characters, but with weight, with silence. Some believe the menhir marks a burial site that beneath it perhaps leaves the remains of someone important, a leader, a seer, a giant. But excavations have found no chamber, no bones, no offerings. Others say it's a marker, one point in a vast ancient map drawn across the earth. If that's true, the other points have either been lost or misunderstood. Whatever its true origin, the men here of Champ Doland continues to watch. Not because it was given eyes, but because we keep looking at it, wondering, searching, as if hoping that one day the stone will decide it's waited long enough, and then maybe finally it will speak. But until then it waits. In a quiet field in northern France, surrounded by soft grass, songbirds, and low clouds, a single piece of the past refuses to fall silent. Thumbs with questions we can't yet translate. It echoes a time we've long forgotten, and in its stillness it reminds us that the earth remembers more than we do. Gunung, the mountain that shouldn't exist. It begins quietly, almost too quietly for what it's hiding. Deep in the lush hills of West Java, Indonesia, there is a place where the trees whisper secrets older than memory itself. The locals call it Gunung Padang, the mountain of enlightenment. To the untrained eye, it may look like a typical green-covered hill, peaceful, still gently sloping into the sky. But beneath the moss and vines, under the soil and roots, lies a mystery that has shaken the foundation of everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations. Gunung Padang is no ordinary hill. It's not even entirely natural. What stands here, layered in basalt stones and volcanic soil, is believed by some to be the oldest known megalithic structure in the world. Ataris pyramid carved and raised by human hands, possibly tens of thousands of years ago. Let's slow down here, you're not rushing. There's no need to imagine yourself standing at the base of this green rise. The air is thick with the scent of earth and rain-soaked leaves. Crickets hum lazily in the distance. You place your hand on a stone, not just any stone. It's warm and smooth in places, yet irregular, as if chipped deliberately. It doesn't belong in the jungle, and yet here it is. Archaeologists first paid attention to this place in the 1970s. From the top, it looked like a megalithic site, 5 stone terraces climbing up like a ceremonial staircase. They thought it was just another ancient shrine built perhaps 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. That would have been remarkable enough, but it was only the beginning. In 2011, everything changed. A group of Indonesian researchers conducted ground-penetrating radar and core drilling. What they found startled even the most skeptical scientists. Underneath the visible terraces, there was more. Far more solid stone layers, artificial chambers, geometric shapes not from 3,000 years ago, not even 5,000. The carbon dating on organic material trapped between the construction layers suggested something wild. This site could be up to 20,000 years old. Some even proposed 25,000 years. That number is not just surprising. It breaks every established narrative we have. It suggests that during a time when humans were supposed to be primitive hunters and gatherers, someone somewhere was building complex structures out of stone on a massive scale. Imagine the implications. Thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt, before Stonehenge, before the cities of Mesopotamia, there may have been a forgotten civilization here, carving terraces into volcanic rock, arranging stones to follow the stars, engineering chambers underground. You sit on one of the flat stones and feel its weight, not just physical but historical. Who placed it here? What were they thinking? Were they trying to align with the sun? To bury their dead? To reach something divine? Gunpad is silent on that. It doesn't give easy answers. There are symbols. Yes, there is geometry. Some of the blocks are shaped with unnerving precision, stacked in interlocking patterns like a giant puzzle. Some researchers believe there are corridors beneath the earth, sealed rooms, perhaps a hidden burial site or a ritual center. But others dismiss it all. They say the deeper layers are just natural formations, that the radiocarbon dates come from organic materials unrelated to human activity, that people are seeing patterns where none exist, that Gunpadong is interesting but not revolutionary. And yet something doesn't sit right. Why would ancient people haul thousands of basalt columns up a steep hill, some weighing several hundred kilograms each, and arrange them so deliberately? Why would they build 5 ascending terraces with stone staircases between them, if it weren't for some larger purpose? As the mist rolls in and the jungle sways, you realize the truth may never be agreed upon. But you can feel it. This place is different. It's not just a pile of rocks. It's a memory carved into the earth. And if the oldest estimates are even partly correct, Gunung Padang would force us to redraw the map of human history. It would mean that civilization, as we define it, began long before we ever imagined. There's something poetic about that, isn't there? That long before we had writing, long before bronze or wheels, there were hands stacking stones in harmony with the land. That beneath our feet, forgotten knowledge sleeps beneath layers of time, waiting to be remembered. You look around, the jungle is reclaimed so much. Roots split the stones. Grass covers the terraces, but the shape is still there, defiant against time. This was no accident. This was intention, purpose, and somewhere in the silence the builders still speak, not with words, but with placement, pattern, and permanence. The sun begins to set. Shadows lengthen. The stones glow with a faint orange hue. Maybe the people who built this did so to be remembered. Or maybe they did it for something bigger, something we've forgotten how to see. Either way, Gunung Padang stands, not shouting, just waiting for someone to listen. The Sajama lines, Bolivia's eternal map beneath the sky. If you were to rise gently into the air, higher than the trees, higher than the mountains, and look down upon the dry plains of western Bolivia, something unexpected would appear beneath you. Something ancient, silent, and incredibly precise. Etched into the earth for miles upon miles. You'd begin to see lines, thousands of them, perfectly straight, stretching endlessly across the landscape, like faint scars in the dust. This is not random. This is not erosion. These are the Sajama lines, one of the largest and most mysterious geoglyph networks on Earth. The first impression is overwhelming. They go on for hundreds of kilometers, crossing plains, ascending hills, running through everything. Trees, rocks, streams. Each line appears as if drawn by an invisible hand, straight as an arrow with no apparent regard for the terrain. There are no curves, no spirals, no images of birds or animals like the famous Nazca lines. Just straight lines, thousands of them, covering an area of over 22,000 square kilometers, which is larger than the country of El Salvador, and nobody really knows why they exist. Sit with that for a moment. The earth beneath your feet is dry, cracked. The air is thin. This is high-altitude terrain. You're more than 12,000 ft above sea level. There's almost no sound except the whispering wind. And yet this land holds the quiet memory of something vast, something forgotten. When the lines were first studied, people thought they might be roads, but most of them lead nowhere. Others suggested they were irrigation canals, but the Sajama region is arid and doesn't support that kind of agriculture. Still others think they were paths for ritual pilgrimages, trails that connected sacred places, shrines, and burial towers across the high plains. Maybe the lines helped people find their way across difficult terrain, guiding them spiritually and physically through the harsh landscape. The indigenous Aymara people who live in the region have passed down stories, oral traditions that speak of huecas, sacred places connected across the land. Some say the lines were walked in ceremonial silence from one sacred site to another. A long journey, a spiritual map walked in devotion. But that doesn't explain their number, their precision, or their scale. There are over 16,000 individual lines, and some stretch for up to 20 kilometers without a single bend. Some researchers believe they could be more than 3,000 years old, possibly even older. They were made by removing the dark surface stones, oxidized and hardened by time, and exposing the lighter soil beneath. It's simple. No carving tools, no machinery, just the act of clearing. And yet the result is massive. Even modern archaeologists don't know how these people managed to keep the line so perfectly straight, especially across hills and valleys. From the ground, it's nearly impossible to grasp their alignment. You have to be above them, high above, to truly see their order. So how did they do it? Did they use alignments with stars? Did they map out their steps with sightlines between mountain peaks? Or was it something else entirely? Something we've forgotten how to measure. When modern researchers mapped the Sajama lines using satellite imagery and aerial photography, the scale became clearer. This wasn't just a few spiritual trails. This was a coordinated effort on a territorial scale, something that would have required generations of knowledge and cultural memory to maintain. And yet, there are no ancient texts here, no glyphs, no inscriptions explaining what these lines were for. They simply exist, quiet, sprawling, absolute, Some believe the lines mark astronomical alignments, solar paths, solstice sunrises, or lunar cycles. Others think they map water veins or ley lines, energetic paths through the earth, invisible to the eye but sacred to ancient cultures. And of course there are the theories that lie on the fringe that the Sajama lines are messages to the sky, to beings above, or navigational aids for something not entirely human. But those ideas, however imaginative, still fall short of explaining the method, the intention. What remains true, no matter how you interpret them, is this. The people who made the Sajama lines were trying to communicate, maybe with the divine, maybe with the land, maybe with each other. Their message isn't in language. It's in geometry and direction and motion. A message meant to be walked, not read. Imagine waking at dawn in this place. The ground is cold. The sky painted orange and gold. You begin walking one of the lines, just one. It stretches ahead of you, disappearing into the horizon. You follow it, and after a while, you lose track of time. You're just walking straight, undistracted, steady. Feels like meditation, like focus, like surrender. Perhaps that was to the path. After hours, you stop and look back. The line you walked is barely visible, but it's there. And you wonder how many people before you have done the same. How many footsteps have passed this way, each one unaware of the scale they were part of. Now as the sun sets over the Sajama plateau, the shadows stretch across the lines, casting long memories in the dust. The lines were not drawn in a day, they were not made in haste, and they were not made for the eyes of today. But they endure. This network, more vast than any ancient road system, more mysterious than most ancient maps, still waits, untouched by progress, unchanged by time. Somewhere in the silence of this high-altitude desert, the earth still remembers the paths that people once walked, the intentions they left behind, the sacred order that meant something once. And maybe if you walk far enough in the right direction, quietly enough, you'll begin to remember it too. The Valcameca petroglyphs, Italy. In the quiet valleys of northern Italy, where soft mists roll through the alpine air, and the trees stand like ancient witnesses, there lies a world that was etched into stone, not built, not written, but carved thousands of years ago, one mark at a time. This is Valcameca, a place not of ruins or grand architecture, but of whispers etched in time, in stillness, a forgotten language waiting. Most travelers pass it by, unaware that beneath the mountains of Lombardy rests one of the oldest and most expansive records of human thought ever known. Over 140,000 petroglyphs scattered across more than 2,400 rock surfaces. Some marks are simple, a man, a deer. Others are impossibly complex, spirals, maps, objects that seem to match modern forms. And then there are the ones no one can explain. The story begins somewhere around 8,000 years ago. That's before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, even before the invention of writing. In those early Neolithic times, humans had only just begun to settle. But here in Valcameca, someone was already carving with tools made of stone scenes that suggest purpose, memory, even science. What drove them? Was it ritual? A need to remember? A way to map the stars or seasons? Or was it something even deeper? A need to leave behind proof that they existed, that they felt, that they wondered. The carvings weren't hidden deep in caves. They were made in the open on exposed rock surfaces. That choice mattered. It meant the people of Valcameca wanted these images to last, to be seen, to endure sun, rain, wind, and time itself. Now when you walk through the valley, you see the past rise up from the earth itself. Deer locked in motion, hunters chasing with bows, mysterious figures with horned helmets, arms raised not in battle but as if in ceremony, and then scattered among them, shapes that seem out of place. Geometric grids, star-like symbols, ladder shapes, objects eerily similar to wheels or antennas. Some of the petroglyphs are layered not in randomness but in eras. Archaeologists can read time in the stone. The oldest carvings are deeper, weathered by millennia. Later symbols from the Bronze Age overlay them. It's like a conversation across generations. One group speaks, another responds. Centuries later, still the full meaning of that conversation is lost to us. And perhaps that's the part that draws you in. You start to feel it. Not just the age of the valley, but the intention. These were not idle doodles or decorative art. These were messages, statements, records, warnings. Maybe we see images of plowing fields, of humans and animals, of suns and wheels, and then of things we don't understand. Some researchers believe the carvings aligned with celestial events, that some spirals track solstices, that some symbols record comets or the moon's phases. Others point to the valley's role as a prehistoric crossroads. Was Valka Monica a sacred meeting place, a neutral ground where tribes came to share not just goods, but stories? Among the most debated carvings are those that seem to resemble modern-day machines. One glyph looks like a man inside what seems like a suit, round, bulky, with lines suggesting tubes or antennas. Another shows a structure some claim resembles an ancient satellite dish. Could these really be evidence of lost knowledge, or are we just seeing what we want to see? Science for now offers more grounded theories. Many glyphs clearly relate to agriculture, hunting, worship. Some are landmarks, others possibly shamanic visions. Yet no one, not the archaeologists, not the linguists, not even the descendants of the ancient Kamuni people can read the petroglyphs like a script. There is no Rosetta Stone, just shapes, thousands of them, like a dream remembered only halfway. Even stranger, some carvings have styles that don't match any known local culture. Were they made by visitors, travelers from other regions, or from far further? Valka sat on ancient routes between the Alps and the Italian plains. Who passed through, and what did they leave behind? In one remote section of the valley, there's a rock with carvings unlike any others. Interlocked spirals, a pattern that doesn't repeat. No animals, no humans, just curves, geometric, almost mathematical. No one has decoded it. It doesn't match agricultural calendars. It doesn't seem spiritual. And yet it was carved with care. And there in that mystery lies the power of Valkonica. Not in what we know, but in what we don't. As you listen now, imagine you're standing in that valley at dusk. The air cools, the rocks are warm from the day sun. You brush your fingers gently across an ancient carving. Just a shape, maybe a spiral, maybe a man. You feel the groove carved into the rock, and for a moment across 8,000 years, someone reaches back toward you. You don't know their name. You'll never hear their voice, but their thoughts, their touch, it's right here. That is the weight of Valka Monica. Not in buildings or bones, but in the sheer persistence of expression. The Kamuna people live their lives here. They watched the stars shift, the seasons change. They buried their dead, raised their children, and all the while they carved. It's said that culture is memory. If so, Valka Monica is a memory that refused to fade. Even now, the valley still shifts and moves. Some carvings are being lost to erosion. Others, protected by moss and shadow, remain untouched. Archaeologists have mapped over 140,000 so far, but the real number may be far greater. The earth still hides its secrets. One legend in the region speaks of a stone that sings when touched on the right night. A rock said to echo with voices from the past. Of course, it's just a story. Or maybe like the carvings, it's a truth hidden in metaphor. We don't always need answers. Sometimes what we need is wonder. And that's what Valka Monica offers in abundance. Not solutions, but silence, shape, and time. Whispers etched in stone. A language no one can read, yet one every soul seems to recognize. As you drift now into sleep, let the valley linger in your thoughts. Not for its mystery alone, but for the people who felt compelled to leave something behind. Something that would last. Something that maybe would reach someone like you. Even across 8,000 years, even in the quiet, the giant stone head of Guatemala, there's something haunting about a face carved in stone. Not just any face, but one that shouldn't be there. Deep in the jungles of Guatemala, surrounded by thick canopies and the sounds of birds echoing across ancient paths, lies a relic that feels like a misplaced chapter from history. A stone head, tall, serene, and strangely unfamiliar. This isn't a Mayan face. It's not Mech either. It's something else. The first time this stone face was revealed to the world was through a photograph. A blurry black and white snapshot taken decades ago showed a towering head rising from the forest floor. Its eyes closed, its expression calm. It was unlike anything we'd seen before in Mesoamerica. The image appeared thanks to a Guatemalan explorer named Dr. Oscar Rafael Padilla. According to his account, the photograph had been taken in the 1950s and showed a statue located in a remote part of the jungle somewhere in the south of Guatemala. Though the exact coordinates were left out or perhaps forgotten, this massive stone head had delicate lips, a high forehead, and features that didn't align with any of the indigenous groups known to have lived in the area. It seemed more Mediterranean, or even bizarrely something beyond Earth. That idea alone sparked imaginations. Could the point to bring the mind into stillness through movement, to connect the sacred spaces by connecting yourself. This have been a relic from a civilization we never knew about. Or was it just a misinterpretation? Padilla set out to find the monolith himself, but by the time he reached the site, it was already too late. The area had been overrun by military activity, and the statue, if it was ever truly there, was destroyed. What was once a proud face gazing into the trees had become rubble, broken into pieces by shelling and bullets, as if someone or something wanted it gone. What makes this story even more compelling is that the stone head never appeared again. No second photograph, no detailed study, just one old photo and a few eyewitness accounts. Some said it was part of a larger complex buried underground. Others claimed it wasn't a statue at all, but the visible part of a much greater artifact hidden beneath the soil. Skeptics argue that the photo could have been a hoax, that it was staged, or maybe even misidentified. There are, after all, many stone heads in Mesoamerican archaeology, most notably the colossal mech heads, but those are distinctly different in both style and context. They are flat-faced, wearing helmets. This was something else. Still, the possibility of the stone head being authentic continues to haunt researchers. Theories have multiplied. One suggests it was made by an unknown culture that predates even the oldest civilizations in Central America. Another links it to extraterrestrials, proposing that it was part of some ancient landing site, a marker or a guardian left by visitors from these stars. Some claim that if we found the original site, we'd discover tunnels underneath, chambers filled with forgotten knowledge, that the stone head was not just an artwork, but a doorway to something greater. The jungle doesn't speak often, but it remembers everything. Roots twist over ancient floors, trees sprout through abandoned walls, and sometimes, just sometimes, the earth reveals a piece of its past in the most peculiar way. Like a single head carved with care, set to face the sky and then buried again by time. What really stands out is the silence surrounding it. Now, most archaeologists don't mention it. Museums don't preserve it. History books leave it out. Was it simply forgotten or deliberately ignored? Maybe it challenges the timeline. Maybe it doesn't fit the narrative. Imagine walking through the dense undergrowth, leaves brushing against your arms, the air thick with the scent of wet moss and tree sap, and then there it is. A face half buried in vines staring back at you, a face too refined for its surroundings, a presence that feels knowing. That's the kind of moment that stays with you, because even if we never find the stone head again, its story lingers like a shadow just beyond our reach. What culture carved it? Why? And why does it seem so out of place? Perhaps beneath the earth of Guatemala, there are still remnants of a story we've never been told, a story older than the pyramids, stranger than the myths. A story about those who walked this land before recorded time. And perhaps, just perhaps, they left a face behind to remind us they were here, quiet, watchful, and waiting. The megalithic ruins of Tuca, in the quiet deserts of northern Peru, where the air hums with stillness and the ground holds centuries of silence, lies a forgotten city, its bones scattered across the sand, its secrets still buried in dust. This is Tuquima, a name that echoes like a whisper in the wind, a city not of one pyramid but of 26. You wouldn't know it just by looking from afar. The desert stretches out flat, dry, and golden. But as you step closer, what seem like hills begin to shift in shape. Their slopes are too steep, their angles too precise. One by one, the pyramids of Tucumã rise before you. Not stone pyramids like Egypt's, but earthen giants built with adobe bricks and megalithic remnants, worn down by time, but still defiant. Tucumã is unlike any ancient site in Peru. It doesn't belong to the Inca, although they did arrive here eventually. It wasn't built by the Moche either. Instead, it stands as the legacy of an even older, lesser-known people, the Lambayak, a culture that thrived before the rise of the Inca Empire, whose myths, rituals, and fears shaped the very foundations of this strange city. The Lambayak people believed in powerful gods, gods that came from the sea. Their most important deity, Nil, was said to have arrived on the shores in a boat made of balsa wood. He brought knowledge, order, and divine rule. Some believe Tuk was built as a city dedicated to Niamp, a sacred space designed not just for living, but for connecting the heavens to the underworld. The pyramids themselves, massive structures made mostly of mud brick, were once grand ceremonial complexes, but today they sit like tired giants under the sun, their outer walls eroded by centuries of wind and rain. Some look like giant mounds. Others, like the massive Haka, stretch across the landscape over 700 meter long. That's longer than any pyramid in the Americas. And still, most people have never heard of it. What's strange about Tukami isn't just its scale. It's the mystery surrounding its purpose. Why build 26 pyramids? Why cluster them so closely? What kind of ceremonies demanded such monumental architecture? Archaeologists have found remnants of offerings, ceramics, textiles, even human sacrifices. But these finds raise more questions than answers. The layout of the city seems to follow a cosmic order, yet no one has deciphered its full meaning. Some believe the pyramids were tombs. Others say they were temples. And there are those who suggest something deeper, something more metaphysical. One theory claims that Tukami was not just a ceremonial site, but a portal. A place where rituals were performed to open connections between worlds. The world of the living and the dead, the physical and the spiritual. There's something eerie about walking through Tukami at dusk. The wind carries whispers. The adobe bricks seem to hold memory in their silence. The shadows between the walls stretch long, like the arms of something ancient reaching for the present. Locals say the area is cursed. For centuries, people feared Tukami. They avoided it. They spoke of it in hushed voices. Legends tell of spirits that guard the pyramids, of energy that still pulses beneath the ground. Some believe that those who dig too deeply will disturb something best left forgotten. In 1991, Thor Heyerdahl, the famous Norwegian explorer, visited Tukami. He believed the city was tied to global patterns of seafaring cultures, that the Lambayak may have been connected to other ancient builders across oceans. His theories were bold, even controversial. But Tukami made him pause. There was something here, something that didn't fit neatly into the textbook version of history. The more you look at Tukami, the more it refuses to give answers. It doesn't behave like other ancient cities. Its pyramids aren't aligned in ways we'd expect. Its walls contain layers of rebuilding, destruction, and rebuilding again. Civilizations came and went, but the pyramids stayed. Even the Inca, when they conquered this land, treated Tukami with reverence and fear. They added their own constructions, but they also respected the sacredness of the site. They knew this was not just a place of stone and sand, but of memory and myth. And perhaps that's what makes Tukami so compelling. It's not just that it's old. It's that it feels alive, not in the way a city lives, but in the way a dream lingers. You walk through it and feel watched, not by people, but by the past itself. A past that doesn't speak directly but leaves clues. The buried plazas, the broken ceramics, the faded murals, all of them fragments of a story that stretches back 1,000 years or more and ends nowhere. No final chapter, no clear explanation, just pyramids in the desert slowly being reclaimed by the earth. If the Lambayaki had a message for the future, maybe this was it. A city that speaks only in silence, that dares us to look closer, dig deeper, and wonder longer. And so we return again and again to places like Tukimi, not because we expect to find all the answers, but because there's something beautiful in the not knowing, in the quiet, in the way the wind moves across the sand, brushing against walls built by forgotten hands. Some mysteries are meant to be lived in, not solved, and Tukimi is one of them. The dolmens of Shiroshi, in the quiet countryside of northern Japan, away from the neon lights and crowded cities, there is a landscape that seems almost untouched by time. A place where rolling hills meet dense forest and mist hangs low in the early mornings like a veil over the past. This is Shiroshi, a name few outside Japan have heard. But here, hidden among the trees and farmland, lie stone structures that don't quite belong. They are too old, too strange, too mysterious. They are known simply as dolmens. To the eye, they might seem modest, just large, flat stones balanced atop other standing stones. But once you get closer, their size and construction begin to feel unreal. These are not random rocks. They are ancient tombs, burial chambers, Monuments left by a civilization whose name we no longer remember, and whose reasons for building in this particular style are still unclear. Unlike the more famous dolmens found in Korea or Europe, the dolmens of Shiroishi have a unique character. Their capstones, massive slabs of stone placed on top, often have unusual shapes. Some curve slightly, others tilt at angles that suggest intention. They're not just roofs. They feel symbolic, almost like a signature left behind by someone we can no longer ask. Who built these dolmens? Why here? Why like this? Archaeologists believe they date back to Japan's Kofun period or, possibly even earlier, to the final phases of the Jomon era, that would place them thousands of years in the past, long before written records, long before Japan as we know it existed. What we do know is that they were used as burial sites. The remains of individuals, sometimes with grave goods, have been found within or near the chambers, but the numbers are small. These were not mass graves. They were special, selective, reserved perhaps for chiefs or priests, or maybe for something we don't quite understand. The capstones themselves weigh several tons. Moving them, lifting them, placing them with such balance without modern tools is a feat that would challenge even today's engineers. The people who built these dolmens had knowledge, strength, and time, but they also had intention, because the dolmens of Shiroishi are not randomly scattered. They follow subtle patterns. Many are aligned with seasonal markers, sunsets, solstices, or the movements of stars. Some suggest lunar significance. Others seem to form clusters as if mapping something no longer visible to us in this sleepy region, surrounded by rice paddies and hills. It's easy to forget the scale of what lies underfoot. Many of these dolmens have not been fully excavated. Others may still be buried entirely, covered by centuries of earth and overgrowth. It's as if the land itself is trying to reclaim them, pulling them back into silence. There is something deeply human in these structures, not just the engineering, but the emotion. You stand beside one and feel the weight of time pressing down, the sense that this was not just a tomb, but a message written in stone for someone far in the future. Maybe for us. Local legends offer little help. These dolmens are old even in folklore. Some stories describe them as homes for spirits. Others say they mark places of great energy. A few believe they were built by giants, long before the ancestors of modern Japan ever arrived. But most people simply leave them alone, and maybe that's the right thing to do to let them rest. After all, these are tombs, final resting places. But they're also puzzles. And like many ancient puzzles, the more we study them, the more they blur the lines between history and myth. Imagine for a moment the world in which they were built. There were no cities, no electricity, no writing, just forests, rivers, stone tools, and sky. And still, someone decided that it mattered to build in this way, that the dead should be laid to rest beneath stones that would last longer than memory. It's that idea, the desire to be remembered, that binds us across time. We still build monuments. We still bury our dead with care. But the dolmens of Shiroishi go further. They whisper to us in the present without using a single word. Archaeologists have only scratched the surface here. Every few years, a new discovery adds another piece to the puzzle. An artifact, a human bone, a piece of pottery. But no discovery has truly cracked the mystery of why. Why do this design? Why this region? It's as if the builders were trying to tell a story without telling the ending. They left the prologue in stone and walked away. Some believe the dolmens were more than tombs, that they were ceremonial spaces, perhaps places of initiation or ritual or even healing. The large flat capstones, when struck, sometimes resonate, producing deep sounds that vibrate through the ground. Was this accidental or intentional? Were the stones meant to speak in ways we've forgotten how to hear? In other parts of the world, like Ireland or Korea, dolmens are often found in clusters connected to myths of the other world, of fairies, of ancient giants. In Japan, the mythology is quieter, more restrained. But the silence of Shiroishi may speak louder than legend. When you walk among the dolmens, you don't feel fear. You feel respect. The kind of respect that comes from knowing you're standing where someone else once stood thousands of years ago, for reasons you'll never fully understand. And that's okay, because not every mystery is meant to be solved. Some are meant to be felt. The dolmens of Shiroishi remind us of that. In their stillness, in their weight, in the way they lean ever so slightly toward the sky, like monuments of memory, pointing not just to the heavens, but to something deeper within ourselves. We may never know who built them. We may never know why, but we can stand in their presence and listen, not with our ears but with time. The mysterious stone fort of Dunonghasa, Ireland. You walk slowly toward the edge of a massive cliff. The wind coming off the Atlantic feels cold and ancient. Below you, the waves crash against the rocks in a slow, endless rhythm. The sound is distant, almost like the heartbeat of the land itself, and right in front of you, resting firmly on this jagged edge of Ireland, is something truly strange. Something that should not be here. A massive crescent of stone, thick, dry stacked walls wrapping around the cliffside, pointing directly toward the sea. This is Dunonghasa, and no one really knows why it was built or by whom. The story begins thousands of years ago, long before the Vikings, before the Roman Empire, before writing came to these shores. Around 1100 BC, give or take, people began dragging stones to this exact spot on the island of Innismore, one of the Aran Islands off the western coast of Ireland. This wasn't just a simple wall or a boundary. This was different. This was careful, deliberate. They stacked limestone boulders without mortar, just pressure and precision. But the thing is, it wasn't just one wall. Over time, they built more. 3 walls in total, each one forming a curved barrier facing inland. It's like they were creating a layered shield against something. But what? Why would anyone build a massive stone fort on the edge of a cliff? Some say it was for defense, but from what? Others think it was ceremonial, a sacred place where only a few people were allowed to enter. But there's no written history to confirm it. And then outside the main wall, there's something even stranger. A field of jagged stones. Hundreds of upright rocks stuck in the ground like spikes. This is called a shada freeze. It's a prehistoric defense system meant to stop intruders from getting close. Like a barrier of natural blades, even today, walking through them would be painful and dangerous. But here's the puzzle. There are no signs of battles here. No burn marks, no weapon remains. Nothing that suggests the fort was ever attacked. So why go to such lengths to keep people out? The mystery deepens when you look inside the fort. At its center, there's a large flat stone slab, perfectly shaped and placed on the ground. No writing, no carvings. Just a single feature in an otherwise empty enclosure. Some say it was used for ceremonies. Others suggest it might have been a throne or maybe even an altar. But again, no one knows for sure. The fort is shaped like a giant D with the straight side facing the land and the curved side hugging the cliff. But originally, some archaeologists believe it was an oval. The sea has been eroding this cliff for centuries, possibly carrying away parts of the original structure. It makes you wonder how much of it is already lost to time. Standing inside the fort feels surreal. You're surrounded by silence except for the wind and the waves. There's no roof, no furniture, just stones everywhere. Stones that once held purpose. Stones that someone placed with effort and intent. And yet the purpose behind it all is now silent. Some people think Dunonghasa was a place of great spiritual power. Maybe druids or early religious leaders gathered here during solstices or equinoxes, using the position of the fort to align with the movements of the sun. The view from the cliff is unobstructed, perfect for watching the sunrise or moonrise. Maybe it was a temple to the sky. Others say the fort was political. Maybe it was the seat of a powerful local leader, someone who wanted to show dominance not through battle, but by building.